Hello and welcome back to Fame Under Fire from BBC Sounds with me, Anushka Mitanda-Dougherty. Now, recently, two very famous celebrities clad in matching tones of olive green entered the Daniel Patrick Moynihan courtroom in the Southern District of New York. If me butchering that name sounds familiar, that is because that is where the Diddy trial was. Now, what followed was hours and hours of Blake Lively's and Justin Baldoni's camp desperately seeking a settlement. What on earth is going on? But before we jump in, just a warning, this episode does contain some strong language. To help us break it down is our resident trial attorney, Shaun Kent. He is back. Hi, Shaun.
Hey, Anushka, how are you doing?
I'm good. I forgive you for not being here last week. You did have a quadruple murder trial to... Were you presenting in court? Was it pre-trial court hearings?
They were pre-trial motions. You're exactly right. So pre-trial motions getting ready for our trial starting next week.
And that took up a lot of your time, but the rest of Shaun's time has been planning his grand arrival in the UK in July.
I'm coming home. I'm so excited.
He's going to be at the Crosswired Podcast Festival. We're going to do a live recording. I'm a bit nervous about putting this man live on the air. And so are the producers and the whole of the BBC. But he's going to be here, wandering around, learning more about this country than just Paddington and Benny Hill, which seem to be his only
That is the only thing.
points.
And Marmalade. And I think Marmalade came from Paddington. So that's everything. And Mind the Gap. Those are the things that I know.
Yeah, we've got great cultural exports. We really are a powerhouse on the global stage. But today, Shaun, this really is one of your expertise. We're talking about court-mandated mediation. Sounds like legalese there. But we had Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni together inside the Southern District of New York courthouse trying to figure this out. Reminder, Blake Lively is suing Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Wayfarer Studio, and others for, amongst other things, sexual harassment, defamation, retaliation, smearing her in a smear campaign. That's what she alleges. Now, Justin Baldoni and the rest of the defendants have denied this over and over again. But Shaun, this mediation, does this mean that both sides are putting their hands up, waving the white flag, and are ready to settle?
Absolutely not. And that is a common misnomer. A lot of times in a lot of districts in the United States, one of the things that is required before you're allowed to go to trial is mandatory court mediation. It is called ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, because it's an alternative to go to court. As folks over there have said that Americans are quite litigious and we find ourselves in the court system so much. So what our courts did is, before you go to court, before we block the trial docket, before we make it impossible to get in and out of court, why don't y'all try to work this out with a third party and see if you can come to a resolution?
Well, wait a minute now. This has been going on for ages. Their docket is massive. Is this not a bit late in the game?
Yes and no. Sometimes, and that's a great question, Anush. What ends up happening is it just depends. You see what I did there?
You call me Anush.
Sometimes we've had mediations before we even file a lawsuit, before we even serve it. We've had that in some cases that we've handled, that the parties get together and they say, look, the court's going to order it anyway. I'm about to file a lawsuit against you. Before we do a lawsuit, let's sit in a room and see if we can work this out. So that is pre-suit mitigation. And then also what ends up happening is trial could be coming up in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and the court will flat out call the parties and say, have y'all engaged in ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution? Have you engaged in mediation? And if the parties say no, then they say, look, before this case gets on my docket, before we pick them 12 folks, I need to hear you guys gave a good faith effort to try to mediate the case.
And what about in this case where we've got Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively engaged in this over a year-long bitter court battle? But she alleges she was the victim of sexual harassment. He alleges that she's accusing him of something so heinous to ruin his reputation. Are you going to make them sit in the same room for hours on end to sort this out? How does that work?
I'll say it's actually kind of rare to have a mediation take place inside of a courtroom. It usually doesn't happen that way. You pick a location. Sometimes we'll go to the opposing party's law firm. Sometimes they'll come to our law firm, or sometimes they go to a third party's law firm. What ends up happening usually is we'll have what are called, just like a trial, you'll have opening statements, no jury or anything of that nature. But Justin's attorney and Justin will be in the room. Blake and Blake's attorney will be in the room. And then the mediator. The mediator is usually a court-certified officer. Could be a lawyer, could be somebody from that district who is a mediator. and then the parties talk. They just say what they want to say in their opening statements. Blake, you did this. Justin, you did this. After they get done with their opening statements, if they're even required, they sign a document. The document says this is confidential. Anything we say, anything we do, anything we try to do in this room shall not, foreshadowing, shall not be able to be used in a courtroom down the road. You cannot say stuff inside of this courtroom. This is all confidential. And the reason you want it confidential is so if the parties try to settle. Well, then after they sign it, they go to separate rooms. And they probably don't see each other the rest of the day. And the mediator goes from room to room to room. And it sounds, for all this fancy legal jargon, what ends up happening is the mediator will go to Blake's room first and say, Blake, what do you think this case is worth and why? Tell me the strengths of your case. Tell me the good parts of your case. Tell me the things about your case. And she says, I have been horribly this, and this. My first demand to them is $20 million. Then they go to Justin's room. Justin, they've asked for $20 million. I'm not giving $20 million, and I'm just throwing names out. I'm not giving $20 million. I'll give them $1 million. Why do you think the case is only worth $1 million? Well, because the law says this, the law says this, the law says this. And then the mediator goes back to the other room. Well, they've countered your $1 million with $20 million. And then they say, well, we'll come down to $18 million. And this goes on for hours, if not days. And that's mediation.
Jesus, they've got their work cut out for them, the mediators. Is that court appointed?
It is. It can be court appointed. It is usually court certified where they have to go. They have to take classes. It's usually somebody from the district who knows. And the reason we want someone from the district is we want somebody who knows what juries are likely to do, somebody who knows the law. A lot of times former judges are the best mediators because they know everything that's going on in the case. And we always say the best mediators are people that both sides respect. And in a quality, good mediation, no one leaves happy. And that means technically the mediation worked, that somebody paid way more than they wanted to and someone got way less than they wanted to. And that's the process.
Now, you said that that's very interesting, that they can't bring up anything at trial that was said in mediation. But what if something really outlandish is said that contributes to the point they're trying to make? For instance, in this case, this is just completely theoretical, but if Blake Lively says something abhorrent to Justin Baldoni and then he can't say at trial, not only has she subjected me to this, and this in the press, when we got into the mediation room, she called me a prick.
If she says something, it is not permissible based upon that agreement. It is not permissible to be used inside of a trial courtroom. And the question always comes up, what would a judge do if somebody gets on the stand and says something completely impermissible in front of that jury? What will end up happening? And then the other thing that could end up happening is you have confidentiality agreements. So you've noticed nobody is giving us any statements as what's happened in this mediation. You haven't heard Blake said he was this and these was this and this was this. You haven't heard any press conferences. And what would also happen is, let's say for argument's sake, they settled it. Let's say they settled it for a confidential amount. And let's say Blake lets that amount slip. Let's say she has a press conference and say, I got paid $10 million. And he admitted that he was sorry. That could violate the entire terms of the mediation. And they could say, we want to wipe it out and we want to go to trial because they violated it. Let's go straight to trial. That is their right.
Now, you mentioned there about getting up on the stand and saying something in front of the jury. I want everyone to cast their minds back to the Diddy trial, because Mark Agnifilo introduced a few times within that trial that the jury should start to question why the federal government were going after Sean Diddy Combs. And the question should lead them to the answer that they were attacking a successful African-American man. Now, he put that point forwards. But all the judge did was bring the jury back in and say, disregard that. Just wipe that one out. Men in Black, that one. Come on, Sean. They're not robots. Like, if they hear something, they hear it. How does that work?
Well, you're exactly right. What's that called is a curative instruction. And the judge has certain things to his disposal. I love where we're going here. The judge has certain things to their disposal, Nushka. They can say, you know what? I don't think it's that bad. What was just said on the stand is not bad. A curative instruction telling the jury can cure the problem. You know what? This doesn't go to the ultimate issue of innocence or guilt. It's not that big, so I can give a curative instruction. But let's say it's something big. Let's say it's something that's massive. Let's say something that The judge in pretrial says, we are not allowing anything in that says Diddy admitted it, that Blake admitted it, that Justin admitted it. And then someone on the stand blurts out, well, they admitted it. Well, then the judge could say, you know what? I'm throwing the entire case out.
Turning up at the court-mandated mediation, there was, of course, tons of press there to capture Blake Lively coming in. Justin Baldoni came in. Now, Justin Baldoni came in with his wife. Blake Lively came in alone. And this led to loads of speculation online. Oh, my goodness, her husband isn't supporting her anymore. Her famous friends have abandoned her. But actually, I'm wondering, is there some legal strategy to her coming in alone without these names of famous people who she's, well, married to one, best friends with another, that we've heard about so much? What do you think, Shaun?
I think it means absolutely nothing that nobody showed up. As a matter of fact, I guarantee her lawyers told her, don't come, because mediation, for as fancy as it sounds, is the most boring process on the planet. It is hours of sitting in a room. Sometimes when we're engaged in mediation, we tell our client, you know what, bring a book, sit there and read. Because remember, as I described to you, we have that third-party mediator who's going to one room, and then you're just sitting in the room by yourself. There's not law happening. In this unique situation, possibly, it shows that she is vulnerable. Don't forget, we've talked about this a lot. It's power dynamics and who these people are, and the fact that, the allegations are that, Blake has this concerted effort with her team to create this narrative that is out there in the ionosphere, and she's using her powerful friends and her PR team to create this scenario that's not there. And because of the Taylors and the Ryans, and they're much more powerful than the Shauns and the Anushkas, and if they say things, people listen, that the thought process is her PR team, her powerful people are able to use these people behind the scenes to create a narrative that hurts Justin.
And even further than that, to wrestle creative control of the film from him.
Absolutely. And yeah, that part too.
But why is that relevant for a sexual harassment claim?
We're talking about power dynamics. Could she actually be, and please don't come for me, I'm not saying she can't be, but could she actually be harassed? Could she actually be in that situation when she has dominion and control over the set, when she is the power broker and she has more power than Justin on this set? Can she be in a situation in which she is in a hostile work environment when she is the power on the set, when she is the most important person and she has the most important people around her? And that's going to be Justin's claim throughout the situation is, there's no harassment. There's nothing of this nature. You are the power. You're creating a scenario that's just not there. Through the use of your family, you're trying to create a narrative that's just not really true.
Now, obviously, Blake Lively's side are arguing he was her boss and her co-star, so he had complete power over her on that set. But we've spoken about discovery before. Discovery in this case has been extensive. That's where texts, emails, letters, if you're fond of that, can be subpoenaed and entered into the docket as evidence of certain things that were going on to contribute to the argument that either side are making. I'm going to read you some of the messages between Blake Lively and Taylor Swift. I just want you to tell me how damaging you think they are to Blake's narrative that she was in the one down position. Okay?
Okay. Got it.
Okay. All right. So this is from Blake Lively to Taylor Swift, who is her BFF. She says, quote, "If you get here with this doofus director of my movie is still here, open brackets, I'll be ushering him out, but hope he's still here, close brackets. Can you do me a huge favor? I need help with him. Can you tell him you're excited for the movie, that you read the book, but what you're freaking out over is the pages I sent you. What a magnetic scene that is, or whatever descriptives you're comfortable with. I'll send you the scene. You don't have to read it. Of course, it's a quick read. He's a clown and thinks he's a writer now and got this rewrite and told me he appreciates my passion. That's it, full stop. So having the greatest living storyteller unknowingly echo to him how much you love what we're doing, open brackets, giving him credit as if you wrote them with me, close brackets, will go such a long way." And then later on, Taylor Swift texts back saying, "I'll do anything for you," with 2 exclamation marks. How damaging do you think that is, Shaun?
I think it hurts tremendously. It's giving Mean Girl vibes, and it's going along with what Justin has alleged in his defense is this is a concerted effort. I'm not saying it will work, but I think those texts are very damaging. And here's why text messaging are, to me, always damaging. And you and I have talked about this. The hardest thing to overcome is somebody's own words. And these are her own words. And not only are they just her own words, they're even worse because they're own words that she didn't think would ever get out to the public. So those are her private sentiments at the time. These are private text messages that to me are going to be hard to explain because they're your private thoughts to your private bestie talking complete trash about Justin and showing the power dynamic and the actual control. I think it hurts. And that's what I would be using if I was Justin's lawyer. Like these text messages show the true Blake Lively.
So we have those text messages that allow us to see that Taylor was coming to her apartment and Justin Baldoni was there. And then we have text messages after the fact. So we weren't in the room with them, but from Blake's words, we can kind of get a picture of what took place. She texts her saying, "You were so epically heroic today. I recapped every moment to Ryan. I kept remembering stuff. You making shit up about me and lenses and referring to yourself as my doll. This clown falling for it all, but also resisting it. You are the world's absolute greatest friend ever. I won the lottery." And then Taylor texts back in caps saying, "I won the lottery. You are the coolest person in the world and you like me." So from that, what could a jury pick out? That Taylor has come to the house, made some stuff up, said that Blake's rewrites were the best, and tried to potentially strong-arm Justin Baldoni into going for Blake's version of the script that she wrote. I've had a lot of messages from people saying, any jury that sees this is just going to think she's a nasty person. That compounds with some of those clips that were flying around that showed her an unflattering light. But a lot of questions from other people saying, so what? So what? That she might be a mean girl in those texts, or she's texting with her best friend. She might have had power in that she had a list of friends, but when it comes to some of the things that she alleged happened to her on that set, does that power dynamic actually hold? And I want to bring us back to this birthing scene that she speaks about that took place, and it ends with us. It says, "On the day of shooting the scene," this is in her amended complaint, in which Miss Lively's character gives birth, "Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath suddenly pressured Miss Lively to simulate full nudity, despite no mention of nudity for this scene in the script, her contract, or in previous creative discussions. Mr. Baldoni insisted to Miss Lively that women give birth naked and that his wife had, quote, ripped her clothes off during labor. He claimed it was, quote, not normal for women to remain in their hospital gowns while giving birth. Miss Lively disagreed, but felt forced into a compromise that she would be naked from below the chest down. She speaks about having only a small piece of fabric covering her genitalia. She speaks about this scene, which are usually closed sets, being streamed to multiple monitors across the set, and the crew, a full crew there, able to watch it. Within that moment, a lot of people are asking, who cares that Taylor Swift's her friend, that Ryan Reynolds is her husband, that she emails Matt Damon, when she's got her legs in stirrups with a piece of fabric over her genitalia?
Yes, but don't forget, credibility goes on the stand, and everyone's, when we're talking about potential jurors weigh an individual's credibility. And as you saw, and we saw in real time in the Diddy trial, the allegations were abhorrent. But the second a juror does not trust a witness and does not trust what they say, so the way they look at it, if a witness is discredited from the first words out of their mouth, the rest of the stuff that comes up, a jury is going to be like, I don't know if I necessarily believe it. And we remember this from watching the Diddy trial. And don't forget, Blake will have to take the stand. Blake will have
She has to?
Absolutely.
Oh, it's not like
Absolutely.
a
This is
criminal
not a
trial?
criminal trial. This is her lawsuit. She is bringing it. She will have to testify. Okay, let's make that clear. She's bringing it. And when she gets on the stand, all of that credibility comes on the stand with her. She will have to explain how she felt. She will have to explain. And when we've represented individuals who are actors before, jurors always say the same thing. When you're watching actors, juries always think the same thing. They're acting. When they get emotional on the stand, jurors think this person is a great actor. We do not believe the words they're saying. So that's why those text messages to me are so important, because guess what you're not doing in those text messages? You're not acting. That is your raw, true self, and the juries balance those situations. So to me, yes, the things that she is alleging are abhorrent. They could 1,000% be true. I'm not saying they're not, but as a person who's tried a lot of cases, those text messages could sully the jury on anything that she says afterwards, even if it's true, even if it's happened, even if she believed the things that she believed. If the jury doesn't trust her, they're not going to listen.
But what about the fact that, you know, anybody on that jury, like you said before, can take a little look into their own personal lives and say, Jesus, if the messages I send to my best friend were put out there, it might potentially be a lot worse than this. I mean, she calls him a doofus and an idiot, I think. It could be a lot worse than that. Is that not something that Blake Lively's camp could get up there and say, go in your own messages and take a little look at what you say?
I love that you just said that because we've done it, but that's going to be incumbent on her legal team to make sure that that jury looks at those text messages as just text messages. And jurors are people. You might have somebody who has gone through some type of hostile work environment, who has never talked about it to a soul, and it doesn't matter what Blake does, I believe her. Those are the things about the jury trial. You just don't know the system. And to go back to the Diddy trial, we talked about it. Everybody thought that was a slam dunk. The
Yeah.
jury felt completely different.
I mean, Blake Lively's camp have referenced multiple times, not only in her complaint but elsewhere, that there were other women on the set who have expressed that they saw things that were inappropriate. Or Jenny Slate has referenced that things were said to her by Justin Baldoni that she deemed to be inappropriate. So that testimony could in some way corroborate what Blake is saying. But my question here is, Jenny Slate had a different level of power to Blake Lively. So is there a world in which the jury can go, well, yeah, Jenny Slate could be sexually harassed and she could be in the conditions of a hostile work environment, but you weren't because the real world dynamics were different?
Absolutely. I've seen it happen many a time. They could say Jenny didn't have the same power dynamic as Blake. Blake could not have been sexual harassed because she could have stopped it at any point in time, but Jenny could have. These are all things that are go into what could possibly happen on the trial. And it all goes back to why we're saying mediation sometimes is a good situation because both parties have a lot to lose at this trial. Both do. And so that's a lot of reasons why sometimes we say, maybe y'all should try to mediate this case. Maybe you should try to work
But
this out.
Shaun, they've got a hell of a lot to lose if they settle as well.
Absolutely.
This has been going on for a long time. I mean, and a lot of people are really concerned about this because on one hand, it's, did Justin Baldoni, was he a victim on this set? Did she wrestle control away from him and then try and destroy his reputation? And on the other hand, it's asking the questions, we're 10 years on from Me Too. Is this still happening on film sets where women are being sexually harassed? Those are some very serious questions at the heart of this case. And if they settle behind closed doors, I can only imagine what the headlines would be.
If I were representing them, I would have advised settlement is going to be, you might get a prick in your finger on a settlement and people might be a little upset. When this trial happens and people are watching y'all get on the stand and the negativity comes out and your history comes out and the badness comes out and people start talking to you as negative as humanly possible, that's an arm cut off.
I want to ask you another question about reputation in the public sphere. So one of the things that Blake Lively is alleging happened to her is a smear campaign. Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Wayfarer Studios engaged a PR crisis management team to go out there and smear her reputation. On the other side of that, because of the discovery and what we've seen, we've got a glimpse into some of the messages with Taylor Swift, the best friend. We've got a glimpse into some of the emails from Ryan Reynolds, the husband of Blake Lively. And in some of their correspondence, you can see things that mirror some of the art they have created. In one message from Taylor Swift, she says, in reference to Justin Baldoni, quote, "I think this bitch knows something is coming because he's gotten out his tiny violin." And then in a song which people were speculating, we have not had a confirmation, we did ask, we haven't received a response, but a song called Cancelled, which people were speculating was about the Blake Lively lawsuit. She says, were you just too smug for your own good or bring a tiny violin to a knife fight? Baby, that all ends tonight. Good things. I like my friends cancelled. And then there's I like them cloaked in Gucci and in Scandal. And there's a whole chorus there, which I know, Shaun, you probably jam out to.
I mean, just every day, just beating down. Just let the rhythm hit them. I mean,
but we've got that kind of mirroring there of the phrase "tiny violin" in a song people were speculating was about this lawsuit. And then in one of Ryan Reynolds' emails to Colleen Hoover, who was the author of the book, it ends with us. He says, quote, "I heard you guys got a tummy bug and you're stuck in New York. I can't think of anything worse, although it might be your body ridding itself of any residual Baldoni. I'd rather be puking in a gulag than hijacking performative feminism while practicing personal growth catchphrases in the mirror." And then in Wolverine versus Deadpool, there was a character, one of the variants of Deadpool, Nice Paul, which people have speculated was a parody of Justin Baldoni. And he says at one point, quote, I'd be fighting alongside them, but my calling is to someday host a podcast that monetizes the women's movement. Shaun, I'm assuming that's not defamation because it's protected, it's in art, it could be satire, etc. But isn't there a way that Justin Baldoni's head counsel could stand up in the courtroom and say, you know, you've alleged, Miss Lively, you've alleged that this man was out to ruin your reputation, but actually your best friend, your husband have created caricatures of him and memorialized that in some of the most popular pieces of art. You know, it was a huge movie, and Taylor Swift, as we know, is one of the highest selling songwriters of all time. Is there legs to that argument?
Yes, potentially. And what'll end up happening is there's something I believe that Blake's team are filing things called a motion in limine. A motion in limine says, Your Honor, we should not allow this information to come in front of the jury. One, it has nothing to do with me, is what Blake is going to say. I cannot control what my friends say. And two, allowing this jury to speculate what they mean without them testifying is completely impermissible. So in other words, is the prejudice of allowing this so high that it overcomes how necessary or how informative it would be to help the jury? Justin's, on the other hand, is going to say, I think it should all come in. She's filing a lawsuit against me. Because of this power dynamic, she is using her famous friends and all of these messages and these movies to destroy my reputation. I think the jury should be allowed to hear it. So that is going to be the battle that's going to go back and forth with them.
And look, we reached out to Taylor Swift, we reached out to Ryan Reynolds to ask them about their inspiration about those two respective pieces of work, and we didn't get a response. But you mentioned there about you can't have this in unless we call them to the stand and they tell us what they meant by this. Can they call, I think it's called hostile witnesses, if Taylor goes, I don't want to come, but they call her anyway? How does that work?
Yes. So, of course, to get a witness to come to the stand, you have to give them a subpoena. A subpoena, of course, is a formal document that you send to somebody and say, I want you to show up and testify. Now, once you are subpoenaed, that is an order of the court, as you've heard us talk about before. If you ignore the order of the court, you can be held in contempt. The court can put you in jail because you have ignored an order of the court. Now, what'll end up happening a lot of times in our situations is if you send a subpoena to somebody who does not want to testify and does not want to help you, they can be seen as hostile. You should be very careful of putting somebody who hates you on your stand to help your case out. That is what's called a hostile witness. That witness is hostile to your position. Under the rules of the courtroom, and not to get too fancy, but usually what ends up happening is when Blake is asking questions of a witness on her side, she cannot ask what are called leading questions. All she can ask are things as, can you tell me what happened next? Taylor, what happened when this happened? Taylor, tell me about this. That's what you do with your own witness. Now, when a witness is hostile to your position, you can ask what are called leading questions. Isn't it true you hate me? Isn't it true you sent blank? Isn't it true? Because what we're basically doing, as you remember from the Diddy trial, Anushka, you're cross-examining your own witness because they are hostile to your position. Courts are not big fans of putting in witnesses who are hostile to your position for the reason I just stated, but sometimes it's necessary.
Shaun, like I said, we reached out to the lawyers to see what took place inside the courtroom. We haven't heard, but is there a way for us to ascertain whether there was a settlement or not?
Absolutely. What would end up happening is even if it's confidentiality, because it's federal court, things are required to be filed. And so the mediator would have to file his ADR report, his alternative dispute resolution. He might not necessarily say it's settled, but you would see an ADR report saying the case has been resolved. And two, the parties would have to file what's called a stipulation of dismissal. And if they filed a stipulation of dismissal along with that ADR resolution, that would put two and two together that the case has been settled.
Shaun, thank you so much for coming on this week. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Anushka. I appreciate you having me.
That was our resident trial attorney, Shaun Kent, joining us from South Carolina. And that's it for this episode of Fame Under Fire from the BBC Sounds YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode.